When it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog, a character who's known for being able to run very fast, it's important to ensure that the running feels and looks good. For Sonic, something like this is achieved in the running animation. Ever since Sonic 1, there's been a foundation on which his running animation is always built upon. Today we're going to be looking at every single one of Sonic's running animations, except this time we're going to do more than just the mainline games. After seeing a lot of comments in my previous videos, I've decided that I'm going to cover a variety of different Sonic games. Since Sonic 1 was the groundwork of this, it actually looks pretty good. He starts off with a simple jog, until moving his arms a little bit more to gain more speed, until finally closing out with his legs turning into a spinning formation, which looks really good for the Genesis. Something that I want to point out though, is that in Sonic 1, compared to Sonic CD, he actually bobs up and down when he's starting out his jog, and because of that, he looks a lot more mobile in Sonic 1, which is something I really like, and I'm really confused why that isn't in CD in the first place. What's even weirder is that for the most part, Sonic 2 actually keeps his bobbing motion in his running animation, and so does Sonic 3. Also, let's give Sonic 3 the award of being the most pissed-looking Sonic running animation we've ever seen. We now head into Sonic 3D Blast. While yes, this pre-rendered model of Sonic doesn't look too great, his running animation itself honestly doesn't look that bad. It does still retain most of the jogging motion from the original Genesis games, and while his legs don't turn into a spinning motion, I feel like that would have been really hard to implement with the technology that they had at the time, and even then, the animation they already had really doesn't look that bad, so honestly, I think it's fine. Okay, but Sonic R is adorable. Just the way that he moves his big-ass shovel arms and then his head just moving side to side, this just looks adorable. I'm sorry, but this is one of my favorites already. And again, Sonic Jam, I don't think it's as good as Sonic R's, but it's still really good. I like how when he's walking, he really exaggerates the movement of his arms and then it goes all the way to his head. I don't know, that kind of thing looks really goofy to me, but I am all here for it. And while yes, the running animation itself might look a little bit stiff, his head and clothes make up for it though, because they still have the bobbing motion of the original games. Next up is Sonic Adventure. I remember being in shock when I found out that the walking animation in both Adventure and Jam are actually the exact same, with his hands going all the way up to his head to really exaggerate the motion. And honestly, I think Adventure 1 might have the most smooth and fluid animations that lead to the final running animation that we've seen so far. It's just the way that Sonic bounces with every step as he leads up to the final animation just looks super smooth, which I think is very impressive for a game of its time. And I think the final step of the running animation did a really good job bringing the spinning motion of the Genesis games into 3D, because they actually went out of their way to blur Sonic's feet in the final part of this animation, which makes them look very similar to that spinning motion. Kind of. But then we move on to Sonic Adventure 2, and this is where things get a little bit messy. The way he walks and just sways his arms through the air like he doesn't care, I don't know, I just feel like his walking in this game just looks really awkward. And while yes, in SA1 it looks similar, this one just looks really ugly. But then when he's jogging, it just looks even worse. His whole body just becomes a sporadic mess as he flails his arms and legs in the air. And then his top speed animation. My god, it looks awful. Just look at this section of City Escape. That does not look right. Before we head on over to Sonic Heroes, I want to make a quick detour. We're going to be taking a look at the Sonic Advance series. For being a classic-inspired game, it follows the animation techniques pretty well. It still has the bobbing motion when he's jogging, as well as having his legs turn into a spinning motion when he reaches top speed. Overall, I think the running animations in Sonic Advance 1 are pretty good, but as you go through the Advance series, you'll notice that the animations actually change with each entry. In Sonic Advance 2 and 3, Sonic ends up leaning all the way forward in his top speed animation, and his legs are way further back. I think in this he looks a bit too lanky for my liking, and he looks like he's just kind of flailing around, but it's not too bad of an animation, and I can see how some people would like it. Now that we're back on track with Sonic Heroes, this one is also pretty damn good. The motion of both of his legs looks pretty good when he's running along. Each step flows well into each other. And I don't know, his arms go pretty far back when he's running, which makes him look really animated. It looks like he's really putting effort into every step. And even when Sonic starts to speed up and the animation of both his arms and legs are sped up, it looks pretty good. Also, I know I didn't do this with the previous games, but for the multiple playable characters in Sonic Heroes, they each have a very distinct running animation, and all of them look really good. I say this because in the next game, Shadow the Hedgehog, his running animation is very closely based on his Sonic Heroes one. Honestly, his animation doesn't really change too much, it just becomes faster over time, but this whole animation just looks so smooth and fluid, it's awesome. Since Shadow skates along, it just looks super cool when he goes across the ground. But then we reach 06, and while yes, it's not the best, there are some things that I really like about it. His starting animation doesn't look too bad. His arms go pretty far out and it looks pretty nice. But then as he reaches top speed, his arms just go all the way out and he leans forward even more. And I think this is the lankiest he's ever looked in a game, and it looks the worst here. And he's just slowly bobbing up and down, which doesn't look bad, but something here just looks off, and I'm not sure what exactly it is. What's really good, however, is the way that his quills move with his body with every step does look really nice. Overall, it's not great, but it's really not that bad. But let's not forget the Mach speed sections. Now this is pretty damn good. If anything, this feels like the Sonic Advance 3 running animation brought into 3D. He's leaning further forward than he ever has before, and his legs are moving pretty far back. His hands are also behind him. What's more is that with each step that he takes back, his leg corresponds with the quill that he's hitting with that leg, making the quill itself move with every step. Now then, before we go on to Secret Rings, we're going to make another detour. The Sonic Rivals series. Now, both of these actually have the same animation, so we're just going to keep it as Sonic Rivals 1. I think this is one of the only Sonic games where the running animation doesn't really progress, in a noticeable way at least. But overall, it still looks pretty good. The way he's kind of strutting along, it kind of reminds me of Sonic R. It still looks pretty cute, I'd say. I feel like if they gave him a top speed running animation, throwing his arms back would have looked pretty good, but it still gets the job done. Since we're exploring Sonic handheld games, let's jump on over to the Sonic Rush series. As is the nature with Sonic Rush, we can only see these 3D models in a 2D perspective. Now yes, Rivals did that too, but Rush goes a little bit more extreme. But even with that, the Sonic Rush running animations don't look that bad. And with every step he takes, his body bobs back and forth a little bit, and when he's in his top speed, his legs become a blur, which does look good as well. But then in Secret Rings, this just feels really lazy. There isn't any animation of him moving left to right. It's specifically made for him to just move straight, which feels weird because if you want to move left and right in the game, it's always going to feel weird when you see Sonic just shift left and right without actually moving that direction. And I mean, the running animation itself doesn't look too bad, but for example, when you go off of a dash pad, Sonic just becomes a mess. Again, just like SA2, it looks really messy and really unfinished. And what's funny is that what I wish they did perfectly in the next game. In Sonic Unleashed, Sonic's running animation perfectly scales with the speed that he's going. Even when Sonic is boosting and he's at his maximum speed, every single step flows perfectly into the next, which is something I cannot say about most of the other 3D games. Even the Werehog's animation looks pretty good too. Even though he can feel really big and weird, that's kind of the fun of it. When you hold his run button, he goes on all fours, and that animation, while it does look weird, it still looks good. Another neat detail about Unleashed is that every single move actually has animation to connect all the moves together. What I mean by that is that say you're running, and then you press the jump button. It'll transition from running to jumping seamlessly, which is something that even Frontiers is having a hard time doing. We move on to Sonic and the Black Knight, and while there isn't too much different than Secret Rings, they really went out of their way to change the little things about it. Like for example, when he turns left and right, there's a lot more prominent of an animation when he turns in that direction. And when he skids to a stop and then runs around the corner, these look really good. And now we have Sonic Colors, which is largely based upon what Sonic Unleashed did. Between the two, I don't really care. They both look really good to me. Not sure if this is true or not, but in Sonic Colors, it feels a lot more bouncy, at least when you're walking. I don't think I need to spend much time in Generations. It's literally like the exact same as Unleashed. Classic Sonic also did a really good job replicating the 2D running animation. All around, it's really good in this game. Would you look at that? I forgot about Sonic 4. Again. It's actually, like, terrible. He just walks forward. His feet do not match the movement of his body. The actual jogging motion looks alright. His hands and legs blur, but then when he's actually running at full speed, it looks fine. I just think it could be a little bit better. Which, surprise, they actually did exactly that in Episode 2. He doesn't have the garbage walking anymore. He actually jogs forward playfully with his arms and legs going pretty high up. And when he's actually at full speed, they did a lot of improvements to make sure that this looks way better than Episode 1. And I gotta say, they did a much better job in Episode 2. But now we're at Sonic Lost World, and this is where things get weird. When you press the run button in this game, Sonic actually does the super peel out from Sonic CD. And I gotta say, they did a pretty good job bringing that into 3D. But let's not forget, Sonic Lost World actually has its own kind of Mach speed sections. And just like Sonic 06, it has its own kind of running animation. This one, I think, looks even better than the normal one. Just like in 06, he leans really far forward and kicks his legs up really high. But then his hands turn into fists and he balls them behind him. And when you tie everything together, this looks beautiful. This is up there as one of my favorite Sonic running animations. I would say more about Mania, but honestly, it's like exactly the same as the classics, except they added more frames of animation. The super peel out is his top speed running animation, and overall, it's just super clean, but there's not too much to say about it. We head on over to Sonic Forces. I think it's a mixed bag. When Sonic is running in 2D, it doesn't look good. The way his arms just flail around with him, making him look like a wimp, honestly. I don't know, he looks really out of it when he's running, quote-unquote, running in 2D, but then his running animation in 3D looks pretty damn good. Now, yes, it's very similar to how it was in Unleashed, Colors, Generations, but when he's boosting, he leans his body forward, throws his fists back, and looks pretty good. However, this perfectly leads into Frontiers, because Frontiers actually uses most of the framework that Forces had. I am so happy that they changed his 2D running animation, though. It looked really, really bad in Forces. Now, it's good. I like it. But there's two more big things that I really like that they changed. When Sonic boosts in Frontiers, it's the same animation, but they don't have any aura around him anymore, which means you can actually see the animation. In Forces, I had no idea what this animation looked like. Now that we have Frontiers, I can actually see this, and know it looks really good. What my favorite animation change is, however, the way that he leans into his turns and spreads his arms out into that direction looks amazing. This was actually in both Lost World and Forces, but it never felt right in those games, and now with Frontiers being an open world game, I can actually feel the movement of this animation, and it feels amazing. amazing, and I'm just watching it. I haven't even played it yet. If I had to pick favorites, I'd say Heroes, Unleashed, and Lost World's mock speed sections are my favorites. I feel like those do a perfect job of exaggerating his motions while still making it feel smooth and coherent. I think more than anything else, I'm just sad that the Lost World mock speed one hasn't returned yet. I really hope it does someday because it really does look amazing. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. This is actually a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, and I'm happy with how it sounds so far. Please let me know if you enjoyed this in the comments below. Let me know what I should do next because this topic was actually voted on by you guys, and I went with it, and I really liked how it turned out. Let me know what I should do next, and I'll look into it if I can finish this before Frontiers comes out, but we'll see. But thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.